Great. Wonderful. Well, I am so thrilled to be here with Dr. Elizabeth Sheff. She goes by Dr. Eli. And I've really been looking forward to this conversation because I am on my own journey with polyamory. And as I've been sharing it with the group, I've noticed so many people come out to me, come out from the woodwork and share either that they're well into polyamory or open relationships, or they've so been wanting to explore it and haven't really had the resources at their fingertips. So essentially over the past month, I've been collecting a list of common topics and common challenges and common questions, and we're going to go through all of those with Dr. Eli today. So the first thing I wanted to start with is, well, I'll share a little bit about Dr. Eli's background and bio. You're really a pioneer in the study of polyamory, and you've written books called The Polyamorous Next Door, Inside Multiple Partner Relationships and Families. You wrote stories from the Polycule, Real Life in Polyamorous Families. And you wrote When Someone You Love is Polyamorous, Understanding Poly People and Relationships.
And I just came out with Children in Polyamorous Families.
That's wonderful.
I'm such a bad businesswoman, I have to say. I haven't told anybody about it. This is the first time I'm even telling people. The book is out. I know you're supposed to do like pre-book things. It's the secret book.
Well, I love it. You're announcing it here. This is like an exclusive. We got the scoop.
Yes. Fantastic.
And it's funny too, because one of the group member questions I have is about how to reveal to children a relationship.
Yes.
So it sounds like you'll be well prepared for that one.
Yeah.
So I had to start with a quote from Esther. So from her first book, Mating in Captivity, she says, and this is like such an iconic Esther Perel quote, she says, "We now come to one person and ask them to give us what once an entire village used to provide. Give me belonging, give me identity, give me continuity, give me security, but give me excitement, give me mystery, give me adventure all in one. Give me comfort, give me edge. Give me novelty, give me familiarity, give me predictability, and give me surprise." Esther Perel. So I had to start with that as the foundation because I've been thinking a lot about that quote and my own identity, sexual identity, I guess. Before we kick things off, I wanted to share the definition of polyamory I found and see if it aligns with yours. And if you wanted to add anything, we can kind of start there. So polyamory is the practice of more than one intimate relationship with more than one partner, with the informed consent of all partners involved. It's also referred to as consensual or ethical non-monogamy. And at its root, it's a life philosophy that love is not zero sum, that me loving one person doesn't necessarily detract from my ability to love another, and may even amplify my love for everyone involved.
I would agree with that. I would also say that that's kind of a definition, especially the life philosophy portion, of an intentional polyamorist. I think there are some people that polyamory kind of happens to, and they don't have a philosophy around it. They don't have a story around it or anything. It's just like they accidentally fall in love with their two best friends or something. I've definitely interviewed people who have just fallen into polyamory accidentally, and generally they think they invented it. And they're surprised when they hear that other people do it and there's a word for it.
Wow. That's so fascinating because, like I shared, I am new kind of in conscious awareness to it, but I feel like it's been like in my body for a decade. Like when I heard it, for probably a decade, I haven't wanted kids. I love living alone, don't really have any desire to get married. I love a lot of solo time to pursue all my passions. So that would align with solo poly, which means you're not part of like a primary established couple. But like similarly for so long, I've believed that just like you can have an experience and it enlivens you, and then you can bring that back to another person and it doesn't detract from that relationship, it actually could add to it. So I'm still very new to it and learning, but also I feel like it's really kind of like a core essence of who I am. So it was interesting that you said that sometimes it's a very intentional, like thought out choice, and other times it more just kind of unfolds.
And I would say that it might be that you are polyamorous by orientation. I'm not sure, but especially if you felt it that deeply in your body and it doesn't detract from your other relationships. I think for some people it can. If they are monogamous by orientation, then they really are only wired to love one person at a time. And if they love someone else, that does mean they stop loving the first person. So it's very difficult to make blanket statements about how everyone feels or experiences polyamory, because it's such a personalized element of relationships. And for some people, it's freeing. It's the only way they can be in authentic relationships and be fully themselves and not lie to their partners.
Right.
Partners the truth. And for other people, it's a complete shit show, like would totally not work for that. Right. So I definitely think you can't say like everyone is polyamorous or everyone can love multiple people, because I don't think that's accurate.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's also important to note that you might choose to just have one partner, but still very much follow a polyamorous philosophy.
Yes, I would agree.
We just got a group member question that says, my partner doesn't have a poly philosophy and doesn't seem to want one. And I think I get the sense that she might want to develop that and have a lot more communication around it. How do you suggest navigating that disparity?
Boy, that's one of the things I focus on. I'm not sure that it's accurate that these two folks we're talking about are in the mono-poly mismatch, but if they are, that is one of the most challenging things I deal with regularly, as in my relationship coaching practice. A lot of people find me for that. And I find that it rarely works, unfortunately, when one person really, really wants polyamory and another person really, really doesn't. It's very difficult to compromise on. It's like having a baby. You can't have a baby.
Right.
You either have a baby or you don't. You are either monogamous or you're not. And there's a whole bunch of different ways to be non-monogamous, but most of them involve other partners. And if someone is truly deeply wired for monogamy, it's not that easy for them just to say, okay, I'm going to be someone different. It's like someone who's a lesbian trying to decide that she'll be attracted to men.
Right.
You can try that and you can try to force it to work, but really, it's probably not going to go well.
Yeah. So I actually pulled a quote from, I was listening to the Multiamory podcast. And
that's a good one.
It's such a good one. They did an interview with a woman. So she's in a mono-poly relationship. Her name's Phoebe Phillips, and she's the author of the Polyamoring blog. So this is like really her kind of passion and purpose, is helping people have successful mono-poly relationships.
Fantastic.
And I pulled a quote from the interview, was curious to get your thoughts. She said, I definitely think going into a relationship with someone who's already established as polyamorous is a lot easier than having a monogamous relationship that's opening up for the first time. That's like having to end an existing relationship the way it was and start a brand new one. When you're starting a new relationship with someone, you're inventing it together. But when you're changing an existing one, I think it's a lot trickier. The thing about non-monogamy is it forces you to do the self-work. It forces you. You don't have to do it as much in a monogamous relationship because you don't have to deal so much with the jealousy. And then she goes on. And it was interesting because my very first experience with polyamory was with, it was a guy who identifies as poly and a woman who identifies as mono. And when they met, he was poly and she was mono, and they started dating. And they continued to date with him seeing another woman, and then them kind of getting more serious and established, like a primary couple. And they've been just the two of them, so monogamous, for about 10 months. And I think he's feeling like there's an element maybe of self-abandonment, juxtaposed with like deep love for her. And so he's trying to explore opening up. And, we met up, the three of us, several times, and I shared, I'm really heterosexual. I'm not drawn to threesomes. For me, sex is a really like sacred, intimate thing between two people. And she gave the okay for us to have a solo date, and then got incredibly triggered by it, by the length of time we spent together, which was not an overnight. It was just like, it wasn't like an hour date. It was several hours. And there was an act of physical intimacy we shared that was okay when he was dating the other person, but they hadn't talked about it with respect to me. And we had to end things because they're in couples therapy and they're trying to navigate that compatibility.
It can be very tricky. I would say that mono-poly can work under a few circumstances. One, the monogamous person has to be very high in autonomy.
Yeah.
When the polyamorous person is out with someone else,
right,
that monogamous person's mind is not also out with them. Like, oh, is he unzipping her dress? Are they kissing? What are they doing? That's torturous. If while the polyamorous person is out, the monogamous person is fully engaged in whatever they're doing, and it's not torturing them every second, that can work. Also, I would say very importantly, that the monogamous person feels like their needs are being met in the relationship, that they feel very well loved, that their little love bucket is topped off. I think of it almost as if you've got one cookie and somebody wants to share your cookie with you, if you've got an entire basket of cookies, or you've eaten all this food, you're full, you're like, sure, I can share my cookie. If you're starving, you are really not going to want to share that cookie. You need that entire cookie if you're starving. So if you are starved in your relationship for love, affection, freedom, whatever it is, then the monopoly, I really think, will not work. The only time it works is when someone feels really well loved already and they can disengage from their partner when they're out.
Yeah. And that's what was so tough for me, was because the way I looked at it was, they want kids. I don't want kids. They really like socializing. They like sharing a domestic experience. I don't really like spending 4 hours socializing, and I like living alone. They're super into BDSM and kink. I'm into a lot of other stuff sexually. And so the way I saw it is like, this is the jackpot. It's like all the stuff they're into, I'm not into. I think his buckets around emotional intimacy and different types of physical intimacy were empty. And so were mine. And so when we came together, it was just like fireworks because of that. Yeah. And so what was such a bummer for me is that it wasn't able to be seen from her perspective as like, oh, this is so complimentary. But it was, I think, that maybe the jealousy and the insecurity, they're just not feelings that she's worked through. And actually, it's funny because I'm seeing a lot of comments about jealousy come up. So let's talk about that for a second. So number one, how would you describe the difference between jealousy and envy?
The polyamorists, at least that I've talked to, have described it as jealousy is you don't want that other person to have it. You want to have it yourself and you don't want them to have it. Whereas envy is you don't mind if they have it, you just want it as well. Like, for instance, my sister is so artsy, craftsy, like she's incredibly artistic. I can draw like stick figures. I cannot, like, I have zero artistry
Mhm.
at all. Like, of the two of us, she got it all.
Yeah.
I envy that in her. I think it's fantastic. And I would love to have more artistry, but I don't want to take it away from her. She can have that. That's great. But I just want it too.
Yeah. And then someone just said, is there a difference between jealousy and insecurity?
Generally, insecurity is often what's underneath jealousy. I don't think they're necessarily exactly the same thing, because you can be insecure and be like, oh, I'm not good enough. No wonder you want her more than me. Instead of jealousy is, I don't want you to want her.
Yeah.
Underneath
Yeah.
that would be because I'm afraid you'll want her more than me.
Right.
Although, I mean, we're talking about jealousy as if it's only housed or located in polyamorous relationships.
Right.
And I had really, especially at the beginning of my research, I had definitely thought that people in polyamorous relationships would experience more jealousy and would deal with jealousy more. And in the past 10 years, some amazing research has come out from Dr. Terry Conley,
Oh,
Conley. One of the things she studied was jealousy, and finds that there is much more jealousy in monogamy, which floored me. I really did not expect that.
interesting.
But it makes sense if you think about it, that within monogamy, you're not supposed to be attracted to someone else. You can't talk about it. You know,
Right.
it's not supposed to be there. So because it's taboo, there's all this undercurrents around it. Whereas in polyamory, you can open it up, you can air it out and talk about it.
Yeah.
So while we kind of popular wisdom says that polyamory would have a lot more jealousy, ironically, it's monogamy that has the most jealousy. I'm not saying there's no jealousy in
Right.
polyamory, but there's way more in monogamy, which now that I think about it makes sense. But at first I was like, really?
That's fascinating. Someone
Yeah.
someone just commented, I feel like if we say insecurity, that's almost shaming. I guess I don't really see it that way. I mean, it's just a thought that pops up that we don't have a lot of control over. It's often from like our childhood experiences or our subconscious programming. I feel like it doesn't make someone like better or worse if they have less insecurities or more insecurities. It's more just an emotion that comes up that can be worked through and
That
processed.
everyone has.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's no shaming. But I did want to share, this was actually the first question I wanted to ask you, but we got on so many tangents. So when I've been listening to a lot of poly podcasts, I've really enjoyed people articulating their poly why, like what specifically draws them to it. And I wanted to share some of the things that I've arrived at, and I wanted to hear what yours are as well. So some of the things that came up for me is it's just such an amazing vehicle for personal growth and deeper self-awareness, because you're essentially putting yourself in a place where you're going to be triggered, likely, whether it's an insecurity or jealousy or lack of needs being met, or, core wounds. Am I enough? Am I good enough? So I love that. As someone who's like so into growth, that's like a huge plus. And then similarly, I mean, one of my favorite things is to like talk about relationships and feelings and relationship skills and relationship communication. And one of the things I've been so floored about is that a common polyamory norm, especially in like conscious poly structures, is you're going to talk about things before they happen. You're going to like process them as they're happening. You're going to like reflect on them. You're going to schedule like proactive check-ins, and all of that stuff is like really my favorite thing in the world. So I've been really drawn to that as I shared this idea that you can come to a relationship from a needs-based place. So rather than feeling like you need one person to meet all of your needs, you're kind of able to look at a specific person and be like, wow, like they're so great with like emotional intimacy. and maybe they don't have qualities in these other areas that are important, but you can just kind of appreciate them without coming at it from like a lack-based perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then finally, I deeply value personal freedom and other people's autonomy. And I love the idea that there's not kind of like rules in place dictating what people can or can't do, or like societal norms in place, like that it's all coming from a place of like daily conscious choice. We're choosing each other. We're choosing this connection. If we need to fix it, or I guess amend it, or modify it in some way because our needs aren't getting met, we can do that. And there's that freedom in that choice. So those were mine. I was curious what drew you to
Well,
it.
I would actually say that last thing sounds very much like relationship anarchy.
Yeah.
Rather than polyamory.
Yeah.
And that was a great discussion of it. I find people get really freaked out when we talk about relationship anarchy, like just willy-nilly, it's all over the place.
Yeah.
But that kind of ongoing choosing each other is much more at the base of relationship anarchy rather than obligation.
Yeah.
In terms of polyamory, I'll talk about my respondents. I'm not actually polyamorous myself, although I am the mono in a monopolo.
Yeah.
Monopoly relationship. I appear to have a thing for polyamorous people.
Yeah.
But I'm just way too lazy to sustain multiple relationships. My relationship with myself takes a lot of maintenance. I'm a
Yes, I love
person
that.
internally.
Yes.
So I'm like 3 people of relating in here already. So to have a relationship with my wife is plenty for me. I love that. And I don't have a very high sex drive.
Yeah.
And her sex drive is higher, and she really likes novelty. She likes the chase of dating. It's really fun for her. So I think the reason it works so well for us is because I feel so well loved by her, and that autonomy I was talking about before in terms of I'm a lot to handle in here. In terms of my respondents, most of them mention getting multiple needs met.
Yeah.
Or needs sexually. Also that they get to be a different person with the people they're with. And if, people in monogamous relationships who've been in multiple serial monogamists, who've been with one person and then break up and they're with another person, can also relate to that. Like with that one adventurous boyfriend, they probably lived their adventurous self more, and more kind of homebody, let's make amazing food and amazing love at home. They probably explored their Julia Childs self. So I think both getting multiple needs met and expressing different parts of themselves are very important for polyamorous people.
And I just want to
I
acknowledge,
like a lot of variety. Sexual variety can be very important for some people who like novelty.
Yeah.
People like the kind of old standard of like the comfort of being really well known, and we know how to get each other off, and it's great, and you can explore deeply with one person. Other people are like, I cannot handle the thought of only ever having sex with one person for the rest of my life. That sounds like hell. Especially now we're living so much longer than we do, and we're remaining sexually active into our 80s, our 90s.
Yeah.
So, if you're at 40 feeling like, oh man, I don't know if I can handle, like, it's been 15 years with this person and I've got another 40 ahead of me. Some people are like, I need more variety than that. Others are like, no, that's great. Give me that stable consistency where I can go really deep with just one person.
Yeah. It's so powerful for me to have this conversation with you because we get so many questions in our group. We get a lot of questions. And the gist of so many of them is about unmatched sex drives. I love my partner more than ever, but we don't have sex. And, questions of that mismatch where there's this pull towards this person and the relationship has been going on for, say a decade or 2 decades or 3 decades. And because of the cultural structures that we've put around monogamy, it's like there's not a lot of flexibility.
Right.
And so this idea that you could be deeply in love with someone and have completely mismatched sex drives and be able to like keep that relationship and the love while getting your needs met. It's just such a beautiful, I feel like it's a beautiful thing to explore, maybe aspire to. And I love it.
And for some people, that having sex with someone outside the relationship can re-enliven the sex inside of the relationship, bring new skills, bring kind of a new eroticism or just more desire.
Right. Or it's like if they're filling a bucket that you have, let's say it's around emotional intimacy, for example, and that bucket's been empty. And then it gets full and you're able to bring that full bucket back to the original relationship. What a beautiful gift for the other person and for the relationship. I so see that. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about definition of poly, different types of poly structures, the poly why. I want to talk about, going back to jealousy, because a bunch of people had asked questions about jealousy. There's a framework that I've come across that gets beneath the level of the jealousy to the insecurity, really. And so it's a processing model. I'll put this in the show notes, but it goes, when blank happens, I make it mean blank. So when my partner wants to have sex with another woman, I make it mean blank. I'm not good enough. She'll be better than me. He'll leave me. My fear means I am unworthy, not enough, and that eventually blank will happen. You know, he'll leave me, he'll stop wanting to have sex with me. And it kind of helps you get below the level of the jealousy to the root insecurity. So that's a good processing model if people are having jealousy coming up. And I think it can be really powerful to do it with the partner that you're experiencing the jealousy about, because it allows you to share. You know, Brene Brown says that shame cannot survive in secrecy. So if you have a shame about the jealousy, it can't survive if you share it with a partner. And then you can talk through it. And maybe your worst fears are things that he has no desire to do, you know, so he can reassure or she can reassure, whatever the context is. And I wanted to share a quote. This is actually from a comedian turned like personal growth junkie, Kyle Cease. He says, when we're scared to let go of something, it's because our mind can only measure what it can lose, not what it can gain. When you're scared to lose a partner, we can only see the potential loss of one person versus the potential gain of hundreds of new people.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so this is actually probably my favorite topic of the moment, which is rules versus boundaries versus agreements. Do you want to share a little bit maybe about like common mistakes related to rules, what you see works, what you see really doesn't?
I would say people, when they're new to polyamory, especially if they're already in an existing couple, sometimes they will approach polyamory with an idea of, this is how the other person will feel, or this is how the other person will act. Like they're making couple rules within the couple about how other people will be. And that is a no-go from the very beginning. You can only make
an example.
Excuse me?
Can you give an example of what a sample rule might be?
Yes. So for instance, let's say it's a couple that's existing already.
Yeah.
And they're going into polyamory and they say, okay, we've got to love each other more than we love anyone else.
Right.
So you can love me 10, you can only love her 7. And more importantly, she can only love you 7. Or she can't, she can't feel like you're primary, or she can't want to spend more time with you. And that's, you can make boundaries around yourself, but you cannot make boundaries around how other people will feel or act or behave, believe things. For instance,
yeah, can you share the difference, how you see it between a rule and a boundary?
a boundary comes from inside. It's about yourself, and it comes from inside out. So it's, I will accept this or I won't accept that. It's about how people treat you. A rule is about other people. There's kind of a certain patronizing element to a rule. For instance, it's acceptable to make rules for a 4-year-old. You cannot just eat ice cream for dinner. You need to also have some vegetables. You need some protein. Let's have a good dinner first, and then you can have some ice cream. But a 40-year-old person, if what they want to do is eat ice cream for dinner, then, and their partner says, I'm making the rule, no ice cream for you for dinner, then they're just going to do it in secret or something, like the rule versus, well, I can see you want ice cream for dinner. I want tofu and broccoli and rice first, and then I want ice cream, but I'm not just going to have a giant bowl of ice cream for dinner. So that's fine. If you want ice cream for dinner, that's one thing, but I control what I eat. I'm not going to control what you eat like you're a 4-year-old.
Right. Can I share an example and see if this fits the test? So when I was in a moment of conflict conversation with this initial couple that I was exploring things with, after the woman got very hurt and triggered, she basically said, you're not allowed to talk with Leia for 2 weeks while I sort out my feelings. And that was hard for me because in conflict, I really desire communication. And I think she is someone who likes to retract. She wants space. She wants silence. And we had a phone call before the 2-week period started. And he was trying to brainstorm potential responses that she might have. And he was throwing out, well, what if she says we could see each other once? Because he'd said, like, what's your ideal arrangement? I said, I'd love to see you once a week. He said, what if she comes back and says you can see her once a month or even once a year? And when I heard once a year, I'm like, oh, hell no. But of course I didn't say that. But what I wanted to share is, like, the rule would be you could only see someone once a year. The boundary would be, I'm comfortable having an open relationship if my needs are met. Is that, and then if I feel like my needs are really not met, then I don't know if I could stay in an open relationship.
That does sound like a boundary.
Yeah.
Also, perhaps I'm comfortable with you two talking about whatever you want to, but please don't tell her about me. For instance, like, I don't want her to know my insecurities. I don't want her to know my whatever. And,
Yeah.
That's an okay boundary to set. Like, you talk about you.
Yeah.
Fine,
yeah.
but just leave me out of it. That's okay.
Yeah.
I think where I've heard this come up a lot is about safer sex and saying, I want to have no barriers when we have sex, which means I want you to have barriers with other people. I don't want to use condoms with you, so I want you to use condoms with other people.
Right.
And legislating how someone else has sex with their other partners or whatever generally doesn't go well. More of an actual boundary would be, I value my sexual health. And if you have unprotected sex with other people, then either I'm not having sex with you, or you and I will only have protected sex. That way the boundary is more about you and your sexual health and not about what they do with other people.
Right.
And what they do with other people, if those people have herpes, which is rampant, chlamydia, which is everywhere, HPV, which is everywhere, a sexual health boundary is absolutely reasonable.
Yeah.
But it for me, it ends at my vagina. What happens in my vagina is absolutely my business. What happens in other people's vaginas might affect me, but I can't legislate that. But I can say, if you're having unprotected sex with other people, then you don't have sex with me, or you only have protected sex with me. And that's a totally reasonable boundary.
Right. So with a boundary, you have your own locus of control. So rather than saying you're not allowed to have any unprotected sex, except for with me, you say, if you choose, I prefer that you not have unprotected sex, but if you do choose to, then I'll need to have protection with you in our relationship moving forward. Huge difference.
Or maybe modify the kind of sex you have.
Right.
There's
or we can only have hand sex.
ways to have sex that isn't necessarily insertion.
Right. Right.
Or it doesn't have to be a penis. You can insert all sorts of things.
Yeah.
One quick note, though, if you're inserting things anally, make sure there's a phalange on the bottom, or they might get sucked inside.
Yeah.
Vaginas are easier, less likely to suck things inside.
Beautiful. Safety first. Always.
Yes.
I had to share. So another thing that came up in this dynamic was, because there was a lot of insecurity, lack of trust, because this was her first experience with it. It required a lot of both reporting. So I didn't realize this, but all of our texts were shared, our sexting was shared, the physical intimacy we shared was shared without
checking with you.
Right.
So that gives the impression that her boundaries are important, but yours are not, without asking you beforehand, can I share our sexting? Whoa.
Agreed. And then it gets to, and I think what worked out well is I have pretty clear, strong boundaries. And so when I ended things with him, I shared the importance of privacy for me. And so again, like, I gained so many lessons from this experience, but this is now something when I'm entering into new dating experiences, I'm able to ask, like, what is your policy on permission granting before physical intimacy? What's your policy on privacy versus disclosure? Is there veto power? Questions like that. So I learned a lot. I did want to just share, I learned about this really interesting cognitive bias called reactance. Have you heard of it?
Reactance?
Reactance. So reactance.
I'm sorry.
This was in a Multiamory episode that I listened to on cognitive biases in relationships. Reactance happens anytime personal freedom is curtailed, either by a rule or another person. And it's this phenomenon where if you have your personal freedom curtailed, there's a tendency, and it's often subconscious, to try to regain it. And so again, in this dynamic that I was exploring, there was he and I would have a lot of extensive conversations about the types of sexual things we wanted to experience with each other. And then it always ended with like, that sounds amazing, I need to check with so-and-so first. And I noticed every time that happened, it was like my desire to do that act like went up 100-fold. Whereas truly, there are so many things that are like pleasurable for me. Even like very kind of mild non-sexual touch is really pleasurable. But it's like, as soon as you tell me, oh, you don't actually have control over your body, and someone who's a non-participant in the sexual dynamic does, then of course you want that thing so much more. So it was helpful for me to understand with respect to creating rules. Oftentimes, I think they're going to maybe have the opposite effect, where as soon as you put down a rule versus a boundary, that person might be drawn to doing that thing even more because of the phenomenon of reactance.
Or I think of that as the forbidden fruit.
Right. Same thing.
Reactance is a fancy word. I like it. I've never heard it before, but definitely that as soon as you say, no, you can't have that cookie, then somebody's like, oh my God, I didn't even want that cookie until now. I can't wait to have that cookie.
Yeah.
There's also, I think, some ideas around why Like, what are people looking for in terms of reading, for instance, someone else's sexting? Knowing on one hand that your partner is sexting, that's one thing.
Right.
I'm going to be sexting.
Yeah.
Versus reading. What are you hoping to get out of actually reading the sexting? Versus just knowing that it exists.
100%. Yeah. And that's like actually, I think, a really meaningful conversation to have. I would have loved to like have that conversation with the three of them, because I think that there's a lot of growth there. But people need to be ready to have that conversation.
And often it's a feeling of safety, but does reading the actual sexting really make you feel any more safe than just knowing it's happening? Like,
well, I think if there's a dynamic where if you feel unsafe, you can cut it off because there's veto power, then maybe it would,
I could see that.
Like, I want to know everything that's going on because I know it's going to trigger me and I'll be able to pull the cord. And maybe subconsciously even,
Right. I would wager, though, that if you're uncomfortable with the sexting, then reading it will just make you more uncomfortable. It's not all that likely to make the discomfort go away.
Yeah. Well, Esther talks about this.
Add fuel to the fire.
Right.
Like, why don't you say that to me? Oh, I can't believe she said that to you. Right. And I really can't get over that he shared your personal words without your permission. That's really not cool, because it really gives the very strong message that your personhood is less valuable than other people's. And that's not acceptable. That's a slippery slope to, you don't get to have any boundaries. You don't get to say, they make all the decisions. And if you're lucky, you get the magic penis at the end. Lucky you. There are magic penises out there.
Right.
Have to put up with this weird bullshit to get that specific magic penis.
You're the best. I mean, that's actually the essence of why I ended it. Is it felt like the established couple was such a fragile entity that there was like an element of dehumanization that I was experiencing, like a lesser than. I think because there was so much
red flag.
Red flag. What was I going to say? Oh, I want to talk to you. This is a great segue. Triads. So oftentimes triads are almost seen as like the gateway experience into an open relationship or polyamory, in that there's maybe this misconception that, if we find a third person to join our established dynamic, then we don't have to like shake up the existing dynamic too much. And we can always have sex together, so there won't be any jealousy because we'll be together all the time and I won't have to wonder what you're doing with this other person. But really, now that I've been diving into it, I've heard that triads are actually a pretty tricky dynamic. And often then you get into the topic of like unicorns and unicorn hunting. Right. So curious to hear whatever thoughts you have on unicorns, unicorn hunting, triads.
I would say unicorn hunting has a deservedly bad reputation because, again, it goes back to dehumanizing the unicorn.
Right.
Most always a bisexual or hetero flexible woman who is supposed to prioritize the couple's well-being over her own, which is ludicrous.
Right.
And supposed to fit into the couple's life.
Right.
When triads actually work, all three people have full personhood and full standing in a relationship. I think if what people are actually looking for is a sexual accessory, I think that is a legitimate desire. But be aware that that is an exploitative thing you want if you want that person to do that for free. I think if what you want is an experience, then pay for that shit. Hire a professional.
Mm-hmm.
Expect some woman on Craigslist or OkCupid to come be your sex toy and then go away.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
that's not treating her like a person. If you want to use her, then pay her.
Agreed. I agree. And I hear, it's interesting because a lot of the forums that I'm now a part of, it's like you hear so much trouble come out of these situations where there is established couple, maybe there is an element of incompatibility where one person's more mono and the other's more poly, and this is kind of like their band-aid approach. Or, you know, maybe it's a couple and they're just like looking to spice things up. And I think that when you're part of an established couple, it maybe is hard to kind of like feel empathy or like step into the shoes that this is a whole human being and they have needs just like you brought to your relationship initially.
And if you want to be with that whole human being, even if just briefly, even if for a fling, then treat her like the amazing thing she is, that she's willing to have sex with an established couple. So,
Right.
for instance, unicorn orgasms first. Way too often, the couple orgasms and then the sex is over. And the unicorn's like, what? You know, I would say if you want to have sex with a woman as an established couple, then she's in the middle. She gets all the attention. Don't expect her to serve you.
Wow. Interesting.
It's a BDSM thing where you've already set that up, but be very clear then that this is power exchange.
Yeah.
Don't have this underground power exchange where you're pretending she's a real person, but really she's a sex toy.
Right.
Treat her well.
Yeah.
And maybe she'll fuck you again. I just have to give right now a shout out to Rachel Larkin. Has this hilarious song on YouTube. Is an amazing artist, a recording artist. But she's got this video on YouTube of the unicorn, and it's called the Unicorn Song, and it plays out all of this whole thing of these incredibly high expectations of who the unicorn's going to be and what she's going to do for the couple and how the couple has all these expectations. And where is she? Why can't we find her?
That's so great.
Yay, Rachel Larkin. She's awesome. Check her out.
That's wonderful. I'll link it up for sure.
Oh, dude, she's so good. So funny and incredibly talented.
So I wanted to get into the topic of like common newbie mistakes when trying to open up or trying polyamory, or even like things that you wished you knew maybe before. I know that you said you identify as monogamous, but like before embarking on this research and doing the coaching that you do.
I would say an unexamined, especially if you're coming again from an established couple, an unexamined power dynamic where one person, for whatever reason, doesn't want to do polyamory, but can't really say no. You know, because saying no means getting a divorce and then they're living in the minivan with the kids.
Right. Right.
You know, if they feel like they can't say no, then they're doing it unwillingly, and that is not going to work at all. That has a very short shelf life. The couple should work out their issues first before trying to involve other people, because if somebody doesn't really want to do it and then you get other people involved, then their feelings are on the line. Their experience is on the line. Another newbie mistake I've seen is that people are really excited about having multiple partners themselves. And they're like, oh yeah, this could be great. I could have this and that. And it's all about what they get, but they have no preconception yet about how it will be to share their partner with someone else. So if you're in an established couple and you want to open your relationship, then both of you think about your partner having someone else and not just about the fun sexual variety that you might have. People who are not in established couples, I think the concern is being added, especially as a woman, being added as an ancillary to someone's relationship, like the unicorn, or saying, I guess I would recommend that people be really clear about what they want first. So for instance, it sounds like you are very clear. You don't want a primary partner. You're not looking for a husband and the white picket fence and the kids.
Exactly.
super clear
Yeah.
on. If what you really want is a primary partner, then do not get involved with someone who has a primary partner who's like, yes, you can have secondary relationships, but no primary relationships. Be honest with yourself. If you want a primary relationship, then look for that. Don't get in a secondary relationship hoping that you'll get more later, because you are setting that house of cards up to tumble down on your head.
Yeah. Can you talk for a second? So we've used some labels like primary partner or primary relationship, secondary third. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on labels? Like, do you think that there's an element of dehumanization about them? Do you think that they're kind of helpful?
I think they're useful for people to describe what they're looking for, what kind of situation they have already. And if people don't want labels like that, they can, the most kind of blanket label is an open relationship. So they can just say, we're in an open relationship, or I'm looking for an open relationship,
Mhm.
rather than using polyfidelity, for instance, implies a closed relationship within a group larger than two.
Right.
Polyamory implies, people can have relationships kind of however they wish, as
Yeah.
relationship anarchy. Primary implies that person's going to be the most important
Right.
all the time. And secondary means probably don't live together, probably don't have, like shared finances, probably not parenting together, probably, they might inform each other of decisions or chat about decisions, but not like, let's say somebody wants to get a vasectomy.
Right.
From a primary relationship, you might want to really discuss that with your partner and have your partner be part of that decision.
Right.
You might just inform your secondary, hey, I got a vasectomy, or I'm getting a vasectomy.
Right. Right. Yeah. Interesting. There were a couple of group member questions that I want to make sure that I get to. So the first was about children.
Mhm.
So I need advice regarding children and what to tell them, if anything. I can't lie to my very intuitive teen. So I said that one of my sexual partners is just a friend, but a special friend.
Hmm.
And then she said, friends with benefits. I kind of disclosed that yes, but he's also a very good friend first and foremost, before anything romantic. I hope I haven't divulged too much to her. She met him for the first time today and they get along great, like I thought they would. Do you know of any resources for this?
I would say honesty with that teen was key, especially if something is going on and the teen gets the vibe, then being straightforward with that teen, giving age appropriate, honest information is crucial.
Yeah.
I would say a 13-year-old needs that kind of honesty and truth. A
Yeah.
3-year-old doesn't even really probably understand
Yeah.
what sex is. So if a 3-year-old asks you, some of the people in my research have used words like special friend or like a kissing friend. This person is a kissing friend, and this person
I like
is
that.
a go to the movies friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
This person is a, like my exercise buddy is my workout friend.
Sure.
And we also sometimes go for dinner and stuff.
Right.
So kissing friend doesn't mean that's all we do, but yes, it's that kind of, there's that added element to that
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah.
I would say generally, if a child especially is born into a polyamorous family, you can wait until they ask questions, which eventually they will. And it usually happens after coming home from a friend's house when they're 4 or 5 or something. And like they have these big news like, Mom, check it out. That person only has 2 parents. Can you believe it? That's so weird. And that's where you get the opening of, yeah, you know what? Most people only have 1 parent or 2 parents. You're lucky because
Right.
you have more. And that's
Right.
really how the kids think about it.
Yeah.
If you are an established couple that's opening their relationship especially if the kids are old enough to understand sex, then it's really important to open a dialogue with them, because they need to know if they see mom kissing her new girlfriend, that's a legitimate thing. Like, dad knows about it. That's okay. And you don't need to go into explicit detail about, oh, I'm going to take this chance to inform you about cunnilingus. You can just say, dad knows, me and dad, we're talking about this. He knows, he's okay with it. Do you have any questions?
Right.
I would say the least information, the better. Let the children ask more questions and be askable.
Yeah.
Just give the kid the impression and the permission that in this family, it's okay to tell each other the truth. We can talk about things. It's okay for you to ask us questions. That's totally fine. We don't have secrets from each other. So it's fine. If you want to know something, honey, you go ahead and ask us.
I love that.
Which is really not the case in some families, unfortunately.
Right.
Some families do have those rules of, there are things you don't talk about. There are secrets.
Yeah.
We all know dad has a boyfriend, but we can't, it's Uncle Robert that is supposed to be, like, not really, he's just a friend.
Yeah.
Which a relationship anarchist would never say. Just a friend is not RA lingo. But I think that honesty, that the person who asked the question was honest with her kid.
Right.
It sounds like kind of had a back and forth conversation and let the kid ask questions. Do you mean friends with benefits? Handled it fantastic. Great job. Great.
Awesome. And you have your book coming out if they want a little bit more guidance in that area.
Yes. Thank you for reminding me. I keep that's a secret book. Don't tell anyone.
Secret book.
Yes.
I also
in Polyamorous families. It's on Amazon right now.
Oh, great. I'll link it up. So there were two other elements there that I think are so valuable as part of that conversation. So the first is teaching kids about consent. So like sharing that some people choose to have a relationship with just two people. Maybe it's a man and a woman. Maybe it's a woman and a woman, or a man and a man. We actually thought about it, and it works best for us to have 3 people in our relationship. And then you can talk about however consent plays into that. So you're talking about like designer relationships and consent to a teenager, and they could use that to inform their choices.
Yes, and in their own lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The second question was about don't ask, don't tell.
Mm-hmm.
I mostly date men who are not very well versed in poly, whether because their partners weren't into it or they're just starting out. Many want a don't ask, don't tell policy. I'm wondering, can this work just as well as things being out in the open? Does it depend on the individuals involved? Thanks in advance.
I would say it really depends. I would say most often don't ask, don't tell is a phase.
Yeah.
Kind of work on, how does this feel?
Yeah.
I'm doing this at some point with someone, and our agreement is I won't bring home any babies, and I won't bring home any sexually transmitted infections. Right. I won't ask anyone to move in with us. I think don't ask, don't tell works especially well for people with a lot of autonomy. If it's a way to cover something up, the inability to ask can really stifle conversation. It can stifle trust and stifle freedom. Like, okay, don't ask, don't tell. Then what happens if the condom breaks?
Yeah.
Like, you're not even intending to break your agreement.
Right.
In safer sex with other people.
Yeah.
But condoms do break. And then if you can't talk about it, it puts both people in a really uncomfortable position. I think if people have a lot of autonomy and freedom and really don't want to know, but are really okay with whatever happens in Vegas, stays in Vegas, honey. Just don't bring it home. Sometimes I think of that as a hall pass.
Yeah.
Like, you can go do your thing, just make sure it doesn't affect me.
Right.
that can work great.
Yeah.
But the inability to ask or ever discuss it has some pitfalls that go along with it.
Yeah. And it's interesting to me too, because going back to my Poly Whys, I talk about strengthening communication, greater growth, even like deepening connection. You're essentially taking those out of the equation, because if there's not conversation about it, if there's not processing of it, if there's not sharing about it, you're not getting those what I see as benefits to poly either.
Yeah, it can be more of a phase of how does this work? How are we, I guess I could say it's better for people in monogamish relationships where the emphasis really is on the couple.
Yeah.
And everything else is kind of a fling.
Right.
For polyamory, especially kind of back to the labels, like if you put on your personal profile that you want polyamory, people are going to assume that means a more engaged relationship where people can talk about things. People can even hang out together. I don't mean necessarily group sex,
Sure.
Which is actually in my research kind of more of a condiment than a main dish.
Right.
And people who enjoy group sex are not generally having group sex every day.
Right.
People often in the external media, polyamory is very much portrayed as this kind of constant orgy.
That's so interesting to me.
Orgies. Have an orgy if you want to.
Right.
But in reality, most of the sex polyamorous people are having is one-on-one.
Yeah. Yeah.
But lots of communication and lots of hanging out.
Yeah. The way that I kind of look at it, and again, I'm still a newbie myself, but I almost see it as like training wheels. So let's say someone is curious about polyamory and their partner's open to them exploring it or them exploring it together, but it's still like, this is so foreign, this is so weird. I just need a little bit of like space to kind of process what the fuck is going on. And then once they have some experiences and some feelings come up, then they'll probably want to talk about it and not have a don't ask, don't tell policy.
Right.
I could see that.
I would agree.
Wonderful. Well, Dr. Eli, thank you so much for your amazing wisdom and for sharing today.
My
You're
pleasure.
really a pioneer in this. And like I said, there are so many people in the group who are curious about this conversation. Maybe they're just trying to expand their ideas of what they can bring to their monogamous relationship. They're curious about opening up. They're in a polyamorous relationship and working through stuff. And we're so grateful for you for taking your time, which is your most valuable resource, and sharing it with us.
Thank you. And I would actually say if people are curious about polyamory and really don't want to spend money buying books and things like that, you can read my Psychology Today blog.
Oh, yeah.
It's the Polyamorous Next Door. It's named after my first book, and it's under my last name, Sheff, Sheff. And that's got all sorts of kind of either commonly asked questions or little tidbits of research broken down into bite-sized pieces. And not everybody wants to buy a book. You can get that stuff for free too.
Well, we want to support you. We want to support you, so I'm going to encourage that. But you did receive a comment. I've read many of your articles and really like them. Congratulations for all of your work.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. So for everyone who's asking in the comments, I'll for sure put all of the links that we talked about in the show notes. People are saying great conversation. Thank you so much. Thank you to both of you. So wonderful. So thanks again.
Thank you for having me. Nice to be here.
Maybe we'll do it again soon.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye.